will go down drastically from $4 per kilogram to $1 per kilogram. None of that materialized. Supply is available. You want, as Mohammed said, you want green hydrogen, it's available. You want blue hydrogen, it's available. But we are not going to start constructing these projects until we get the offtake. And the price is known because we did the engineering and we did the bidding and we know how much it will cost us to build these projects. But we need the offtake. So we have been into different markets asking for offtake. Offtake is not materializing as of yet because the cost is high. At the end of the day, it's a $200, as I said. I always say it's 200 and 400.
Right.
And I need an offtake not for 1 year. I need an offtake for 20 years. So when they looked at their numbers, they reduced the amount of requirements significantly.
Right. Well, let me thank you all for not only discussing the practical solutions for energy transition, but very much the practical thinking for energy transition. Please join me in thanking our panel.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you.
See you around.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, everybody. What we're going to do now is we are going to take a quick break, but please stay in your seats. We have some security procedures to carry out. It'll be a short break, and just be patient because we've got an action-packed, very exciting program still to come. Thanks.
To generative AI. You can now use words to generate words or words to generate images, words to generate chemicals and proteins, generative AI. Then the third era, which is the era we're in right now, is AI technology that can reason. And the formulation, the application of that capability is agentic AI. AI that can have agency. It can use tools, it can reason, it can solve problems. Essentially a digital robot that sits inside the computer. The next era, the era that we're working on now, is AIs that understands the laws of physics, the rules, the common sense of the physical world. That if you tip over a bottle, that it would fall. It would understand gravity and inertia and cause and effect and object permanence and occlusion and so on and so forth. The things that all of us humans understand common sense about the physical world. That next generation of physical AI, along with all of the technology that has already been created, could be embodied into a physical form. And that physical form would be robotics. So the era of AI is moving incredibly fast. We're in an agentic AI world today, and we're in the robotics world or physical AI shortly from now.
Jensen, I wish we have so much more time to spend because it's really a privilege to have you here. On behalf of myself, our team, we're really humbled that we're working together to create what the future AI factories would look like. Humane really started by a vision by His Royal Highness to really play in the AI total value chain, building massive capacity data centers. So we'll go to 1.9 gigawatt by 2030. Advancing the AI chips, the cloud, models, application solutions. And I want to really thank you. I know it was a long trip from you coming to the US. I am really thankful for you coming and participating in this event.
And Tarek, I am so delighted to be here to help celebrate the grand opening, the beginning of Humane. It is an incredible vision indeed that Saudi Arabia should build the AI infrastructure of your nation so that you could participate and help shape the future of this incredibly transformative technology for the nation of Saudi Arabia.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Almost didn't recognize Jensen without his leather jacket and a distinguished suit. Well, that was fun and entertaining, and of course, I think the fact that they're both here is a testament to how important AI is and how big of a discussion point it is between our two countries, US and Saudi Arabia, when it comes to collaboration and partnership and the economy. Our next guest and our next panel is a fun one that you will enjoy. It's one of the 10 poles of Vision 2030, and that is sports. We're going to have a conversation about how it's a growth part of the economy and what big plans the kingdom has for sports. So please welcome to the stage Richard Atias, the founder and chairman of Richard Atias and Associates, chairman of the executive committee of FII Institute, for a conversation on sports.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. Good evening, good afternoon, in fact.
Hello, hello.
So, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great honor. It is becoming now a tradition for me almost. Each time Gianni is coming to the kingdom, I'm so honored to have a conversation with him. So, Gianni Infantino doesn't need any introduction, but in addition of being the president of the FIFA, I will quote President Trump, who a few weeks ago was also delivering a speech at the FII in Miami. And when he saw Gianni, he told him, oh, the king of football. So tell us what FIFA represents to be the king of football worldwide, please, Gianni.
Yes, hello, Richard. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Great pleasure, let me say, to be here in beautiful Riyadh, to be here in my country, in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Ahlan wa sahlan to everyone. A great football country. Actually, for the Americans in the room, soccer. When we speak about football, we mean soccer, right? That's another debate. But it's really great to be here because it's not just a beautiful country, it's a country that invests a lot in soccer, in football. And let's not forget, Saudi Arabia will host
2034.
Exactly, the FIFA World Cup in 2034. Mabruk.
So, what do you think will be the impact, the look and feel of the World Cup 34? By the way, also, let's make a connection between what will be the World Cup in 2026 in the United States of America and in Saudi Arabia.
Correct. I think we are facing 10 years of incredible excitement. Already, actually, this summer, and you can see what we have here, this is the official match ball of the FIFA Club World Cup, a new competition, the World Cup of the club teams, of the best teams in the world.
Starting June 14.
Starting June
Miami.
14 in Miami. You are well prepared. Final July 13 in
New York.
New York, absolutely. So a great competition this year in the United States of America. Al Hilal will participate in this competition.
Bravo, Al Hilal.
In the group with Real Madrid, by the way. So great excitement. And actually, this ball is branded with the conference of today. So it's a very special, unique ball.
Amazing.
Right?
It's like a collector.
Exactly. It's a collector. And we'll give it to the public at the end.
Bravo.
So get ready.
So one of you will get the ball.
Get ready. And next year, we have the World Cup, the FIFA World Cup in the United States, Canada, and Mexico. And then in 2034, the FIFA World Cup here in Saudi Arabia, in between, of course, 2030 World Cup. So a lot of excitement going on in the world's #1 sport, football.
And Gianni, not to flatter you, you are really an inspiring leader. Each time we spoke about sport, you have a very precise mission, and definition, in fact, of the mission of sport, the values of sport, what sport can bring. 2 days ago, we had this amazing conversation where you were explaining, and I would like you to share that with our friends, about this common passion that people have when they are watching a football game?
Yeah, this is one of the of the fascinating elements. That's why a competition like a World Cup is really transformative, not just for a country and for a region, but really for the entire world. Football is, of course, the world's #1 sport. 5 billion people are football fans or soccer fans around the world. 5 billion people who have nothing in common. They speak different languages, they have different religions, they have different gender, social level, but they have this one thing in common, 5 billion people all over the world, something which is completely irrational, which is completely emotional and passionate, and it's the love for football, the love for a game which takes you inside and brings you towards feelings that you can share with other people. That's why football truly unites the world, and that's what we try to do with our competitions: unite countries, unite the world, bring people together, and bring it all over the world.
Gianni, we are at an investment conference, an investment forum. What are the opportunities for investors from the United States, for example, to invest in football or the ecosystem of football in Saudi Arabia at the horizon of 2034? What do you think are the opportunities?
Well, the opportunities are huge, right? Where is the camera? So I will look straight in the eyes of the people here. The opportunities are huge. Football is a game followed by 5 billion people around the world. We need to find a way to connect these 5 billion people because that's what they are watching. A World Cup, 104 games in 1 month, is 104 Super Bowls in 1 month. Imagine that. The viewers of the final only are 2 billion people. But at the end of the day, I think it's much easier than that. What do we want as persons? We want to be healthy and happy, don't we? So FIFA is official health and happiness provider to humanity because that's what football is doing.
Is about.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about legacy. I think it's important also because we see big amount of money when we talk about World Cup, etc. But usually, what football bring and competition bring and World Cup bring to countries, to cities in terms of legacy?
Well, it brings a lot. A World Cup like the next one in the United States, Canada, Mexico generates around 120 billion US dollars, over 1 million jobs.
120
billion. The football economy. Let me say this one figure to put this in your mind. The global football GDP in 1 year today is around 270 billion US dollars, right? Now think about that. 70% of that is produced in Europe. Now the European GDP compared to the global GDP is certainly not 70%, right? It's more probably closer to 7 than to 70.
It means there is huge.
So the potential is huge. If the rest of the world, in particular Saudi Arabia or the United States of America, would do just 20% of what Europe does in soccer, we are at $500 billion or more of GDP impact with one game.
Amazing. Few words about women in football.
Very important, very important. Women's football and women in football are crucially important. The Women's World Cup, next one in Brazil in 2027, the following one again in North America in 2031. It's growing as well exponentially, and we are targeting there as well to have 1 billion revenue just with the Women's World Cup to reinvest in the women's game. Saudi Arabia, by the way, is doing exceptionally good as well by creating a women's league, a women's national team. Women's football is really the only team sport for women that has such a huge audience and impact as well. So it's definitely also an area in which we believe and in which investment will definitely be worse.
The last question, which advice, which recommendation will you make to our friends who would like to not always be obsessed by AI, technology, and all these great sectors, but if they want to invest in football, how should we start?
Well, call Richard. He has my number. He gives you my number. You can call me, and you can invest in FIFA. And it's the best investment ever.
Ladies and gentlemen, Gianni Infantino.
Thank you.
Before you leave the stage, please, maybe you can
Okay.
you can goal in the audience.
You ready?
Let's go.
Be careful.
Thank you, Gianni. Thank you, Sarah.
Richard, if you would join me for just one moment over here. Thank you. And Jenny, my son turns 16 in 2034, so
Fantastic.
Perfect.
He will be at the World Cup.
Of course, and he'll be in the one in the U.S. as well.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gianni. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you.
Richard, you know a thing or two about hosting events, and I was just curious about the strategy that we've seen here in the kingdom when it comes to transforming its economy around tourism and specifically around sports and sporting events and how you pull that off.
Let's be very frank. You know, the kingdom is by far the #1 destination today for events, and not only sport events, by far. And it's a $3 trillion economy worldwide. And when we started under the leadership of His Royal Highness, a conference in 2016 to talk about events, when we spoke about FII, in fact, the idea was to have one event per month.
That's a lot.
Then one event per week, which is 54. Now in the kingdom, you have almost 3,000 events per year.
Wow.
So I think it's an amazing industry, creating jobs, creating ecosystem, and the power of event is amazing. And on sport in particular, I will quote the late Nelson Mandela, who said, sport is an amazing tool for social progress and economic development. Here we are.
There you go. No wonder you've been spending so much time here, Richard. Thank you
Sarah.
very much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
And I'd like to introduce our next panel now. It's on energy. We have a powerhouse lineup here of chief executives on energy. So for that, let's welcome back Dr. Dan Yergin. He's the vice chair of S&P Global.
Thank you.
The last one.
Right.
Yeah.
Hello, we're going to talk now about driving the energy transition with practical solutions. And we have a group of people on the panel with us who are very much involved in developing and promoting those practical solutions. Mohamed Abounayan, who's the chairman of Aqua Power, Olivier Lepouche, who's the CEO of SLB, Jeff Miller's right there from Halliburton, Amin Nasser, the president and CEO of Saudi Aramco, and Lorenzo Simonelli from Baker Hughes. So let me begin by asking Amin, what are the practical solutions? What's at the top of the list for you in terms of energy transition?
Well, what's top of the list is for sure, you just need to make sure, we always say you need to have an energy that is affordable, secure, and sustainable. So we need to ensure we meet all of these at the same time. So what we are doing right now is investing in renewable. We are investing in oil, we are investing in gas, we are decarbonizing, and we are doing all what it takes to ensure that we do as much decarbonization while we are ensuring that it is affordable at the end of the day and availing enough energy to the markets that we are operating in.
Right. Lorenzo?
I think it comes down to developing a sustainable energy development plan for the future. Takes into account everything that Amin said that Aramco is doing, and as Baker Hughes, from an energy technology perspective, we're there to make sure that we're focused on lowering emissions in existing operations, investing heavily into natural gas, which is not just a transition, but a destination fuel, liquefaction, and then also expanding the energy that's available to us, looking at new ways of CCUS, hydrogen, looking at continued advancements being made in nuclear, and so that we can expand the energy that's available to us.
Well, we'll come back to some of those topics. That's quite a long list. Mohammed, you're approaching it from a different direction since you are in the renewable business.
Thank you very much. I think what, as Amin said, I think what makes it affordable is Aqua Power doing it. And really, I have to say that the whole world, we are very proud to say solar today, since we started, we have reduced the cost of producing, electricity from solar 90%. We have been able to reduce over 60% in wind. Storage today, we are almost 60%. And we made really the renewable, it become a base load. This is unprecedented in the whole world. We are not really producing renewable at the sunshine or when the wind is blowing.
And it's base load because of batteries?
Batteries and hydrogen. And the great thing that why I am very optimistic that Saudi Arabia will be the hub of the digital and the data center, because nobody in the world will be able to have net zero and base load as really this company has done in now more than 14 countries.
Thank you. Olivier.
We believe, and I think what we heard before, I think is the right approach. I think we believe in a balanced energy system for a balanced planet, as we call it. And I think we believe that three things will matter: efficiency, driving more efficiency for producing every energy source, decarbonization of every energy source and favoring the lowest carbon, and diversification. Diversification including new source of energy, new base load, hydrogen and other sources. So digital will play a role, CCS will play a role, and new source of energy will play a role, including critical minerals. So that's a balanced energy system for a balanced mix for the future.
And Jeff.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Look, I firmly believe that prosperity and available, affordable energy are the only two things perfectly correlated in this world. And today, the most affordable and available is oil and gas. And so when I think about the journey towards transition or decarbonization, I tend to think more like we do in safety in our business, which is we used to be relatively unsafe, and today we have moved to being very safe. And similarly in our industry, as we've set targets around lower emissions, we are making progress towards that and think we will continue to do that. For example, with electric frac fleets as an example that decarbonizes or lowers carbon in a big part of our business.
Right. So this is, of course, a Saudi-U.S. investment conference. And let me go back to Amin now and ask you, what are you looking at as an investor in the United States? And in particular, several have already mentioned, Lorenzo, natural gas, LNG. Is that on your agenda now?
Well, the U.S. is very strategic partners. We have, it's a big market, it's a stable market. We have the biggest refinery in the U.S. currently. One of the investment that we are signing today is an expansion on the refinery to make it more integrated with petrochemical. We're putting $3.4 billion in that refinery. We do have big investment in lubricants with Valvoline. And as you mentioned, the gas is a story in the U.S. The U.S. today, in terms of gas, is almost 100 billion of sales gas. So, and it is continuously increasing. So the gas is available, it's at a low cost. So we're looking at expanding in LNG. The U.S. is really a good place to put our investment. We are signing MOUs and investment today with Sembra next decades. That will avail about 6.2 million tons for us of LNG. We do have other investments. So we're looking at, by 2030, almost 7.5 million tons of LNG. But also, we're not only looking at LNG and gas technology. A lot of what we are signing was today had to do with technology. We do have a lot of investment in technology with our partners in NVIDIA and Google and IBM and Qualcomm. And these are important hubs for us to put investment. Most of our venture capital, which is about $7.5 billion, we deployed close to $2.5 billion of that. 63% of that deployment is in the US.
How big is your venture capital?
$7.5 billion. It's one of the biggest in the world. It's for startups and technologies and disruptive technologies. Most of the deployment is in the US, mainly because of the deep talents, because of the business environment that is mainly the governance in the US, the leading universities. So the ecosystem is great for putting large sum of that venture capital in the US, and this is where we're deploying it.
Right. So Mohammed notes how the cost of solar has come down so dramatically with batteries, but also it seems to me that thinking about energy transition has changed a lot over the last 3 or 4 years. It used to be a linear notion of it. Now it's multidimensional, unfolding at different paces in different countries and different regions. And just would like to ask all of you how you think thinking about energy transition has changed from where it was, let's say, when the IEA did its net zero by 2050. And
I think, Dan, it's become more of a pragmatic, sensible discussion with the realities of a complex energy mix that needs to evolve to make it affordable, sustainable, and secure. And the discussions before didn't take into account where populations are increasing, didn't take into account the available resources today, didn't take into account how you make them economically and financially viable. And when you look at the energy mix, and you look at the history of the energy mix, it's evolved over decades. It doesn't happen in a day. And I think what you're seeing now is as the technologies get addressed, the new entrants come into play, the investments gets made, we're going to make progress. It's not that net zero is not out there. It's an aspect of a journey and making that journey viable, at the same time allowing prosperity in the world.
I want to give Mohammed a chance. Has your thinking changed?
No, because really what is really important and relevant, that we need to understand that the whole world need really some freedom. Affordability is extremely important, but also the specific of country needs, specific of country resources. You cannot say one fit all. And this is the issue in the past 3-4 years. Somebody is coming and telling the whole world what to do, how to do, what needed to be done. And regardless, the global north, with due respect, they are not looking at the global south, because reality, there is a huge gap between these two real different factors. So we need to be really more giving freedom. We need to countries to make their own decisions, and we need to let people use all resources, because reality, with this 7 billion people, with the growth of the population, people 2 billion, they did not have electricity, they did not have clean water. Now we have, AI, we have digitals. There is a lot of increase of energy. You have to give the countries and the people freedom to decide. And you need to have all of the energy to be used in a proper way, in a safe way. And we need to look at it affordability, affordability, affordability. Because the North, I'm sorry to say, the global North, they give lecture to the global South, because they have done in these hundreds of years and polluted the whole world. Now they want the global South to do nothing and just follow them.
And of course, there's a huge disparity. I think you've struck a responsive chord.
But I think that what we heard is correct. I think the approach that one size fits all, I think has been tested, has failed. I think everyone needs to recognize that every country has its own journey to its energy transition. Some of it would take 20 years, some of it would take 50 years.
Yes.
And I think having a mix of all energy source, being smart about the technology that can scale faster, the one that have to be waiting for another 10 or 20 years before the technical limits or the economics are not favorable yet. Some of it will require a little bit of support from regulation, from subsidies, so that it can scale, so that the demand is being supported. But at the end of the day, every country will have a different mix of energy source, and will have a different mix of carbon emission.
And that is a very big change from, as you said, the lectures from a few years ago, which said that everybody would have the same path.
Yeah, there was a hype, and then the hype has been met with reality. And the reality has been that not everything can scale at the same speed in every country. So everybody needs to readapt to the pace of the journey.
Jeff?
Look, I think that I'm not sure that my thinking has changed a lot, but I do think that, you know, as you see, just like with any capital investment.
So what was your thinking?
My thinking was that it would be additive, if anything,
Energy addition, not
economic,
energy. Yeah.
but that targets would not be met. And so I think I think about it almost like capital investment. You can't invest capital in something that's low returning and then turn around later and decide to put it into something that's extraordinarily high returning. And in some markets, you can see where cost of energy is driving a lack of competitiveness. And I think that's a real risk. And so I think managing the cost is a serious point on any path that we're on. And so if the cost of energy goes way up because of a fast pivot or something else, there's a likelihood that market may become uncompetitive potentially forever.
Right. Well, so let me ask you all about the management of CO2, what we've learned about that, including what have we learned about what can be done with CO2 in terms of use or process. Amin, maybe start there.
Well, you know, there's different uses for CO2. You can use it for enhanced oil recovery, and that you can capture underground almost 40% to 50%. And that is commercial, it's profitable. You can do what we are doing with Linde and Schlumberger in terms of a 9 million ton of carbon capture and storage, taking the CO2 from gas plants and sequestering it underground. Of course, that comes at a cost because there is no gain in terms except benefiting the environment in order for you to meet your aspiration for net zero for scope 1 and scope 2. And this is the most thing that we think with time, as we scale up, will be allowing us to reduce the cost of sequestering CO2 underground permanently. Of course, we are also at the same time looking at direct air capture. We are piloting it, putting a major big pilot plants in Dhahran right now with Siemens. This is very costly at this stage. Technology needs to transform and hopefully give us certain advantage over the long term. But today, if you look at the cost, just taking direct air capture and capturing CO2 from the air and then sequestering it, you're talking about maybe $600 per ton. You need to take that cost and bring it down. There is uses in certain products of CO2, but considering the amount of CO2 that we are producing, it's not really big. You can use it in certain elements, and we're looking at using it in cement and other products that we are doing. And hopefully that will give us some advantage with getting some gains out of that CO2 that we are producing. So we are working on all of these elements. We do have some for enhanced oil recovery, but the small plants. We are doing one, sequestering it permanently. We are looking at sequestering CO2 in basaltic rocks. So where it get with basalt and it solidify. Right. And we're looking at uses in cements and other products, in asphalts if possible, and all of these things over the long term. But we need to make sure it is commercial enough. And direct air capture is a long-term technology that we are working on. We did one pilot. We are doing another pilot. We think over the long term, that is a good solution if we can bring the cost to match the cost for sequestering it underground.
Does anybody want to add anything?
I have a little bit different view.
Okay.
Personally, CO2 capture and storage is not a solution. You know, it's very expensive. Many countries, they cannot afford it. And it's, I'm sorry to say, in California, they could afford it. But reality today, we need to be also realistic. Today, reality at the ground, it is not economical at all to have CO2 capture and store. And storing is not a solution. Reuse is a solution, and that's our partners here. USA, they are the best innovator. They are the best technology hub. This is what they are supposed to do. You know, it's really working in innovation, technology, development, to be able to really reuse without reusing the CO2 and making it for different application at competitive, at affordable. This is not going to be a solution. It's a luxury like anything else. And you could say that people could afford this luxury, only maybe few countries in the world. I could put it in my 5 fingers. Some of the Europeans, North America, maybe California, maybe other even...
Saudi Arabia.
You know, Saudi Arabia doesn't afford it, I'm telling you. I am not the responsible.
We have a difference of opinion here. Let me throw it to the jury and ask the 3 people from the companies to opine. You're the jury.
So let me add a couple of perspectives, because I think we are vested in CCS and CCU and CCUS for different reasons. The first is that I believe maybe that still there is a role for a CCS and a capture to be long-term, addressing some hard-to-abate sector. I think this month we're about to commission for the first time, or next month, the first cement plant at scale, Breivik, okay, to decarbonize 400,000 tons of CO2.
How much the cost?
I think the cost will be recovered. It's the first one. You need to start somewhere and then scale.
Yes,
okay?
I agree.
So the second thing is there are some applications. We have just commercialized a capture application of a waste-to-energy plant that produce power, produce heat, and we capture the CO2, and we use the CO2 in greenhouse for agriculture application. This is economic, because the waste-to-energy is efficient and has 3 applications that are sold to different industrials for this. So I think we find applications that are, and the cost of capture will go down. I'm not talking about direct capture, I'm talking about process by learning and scaling and doing it from waste to energy, power, and some other application hard to abate, because this is the only solution for hard to abate sector.
So Jeff and Lorenzo, where do you come out in this debate?
Look, I view it as a way to minimize emissions, but it does come at a cost. I think we'll get better at doing that. I know we do a fairly large business in CCUS today. And that cost curve continues to come down, but under almost any circumstances, unless we find effective uses for CO2, it will be a burden on the cost of energy.
Yeah.
We've got to go back to the basics of chemistry and the molecule, and today, 97% pure CO2 has a value on the marketplace. The circular economy is what we've got to evolve into, which is how do we make sure we're bringing economically, financially viable solutions to the energy mix of the future. Ultimately, just storing something in the ground is a cost and a burden. Doing something with it is going to provide value and provide that circular economy.
Yeah.
Carbon black, CO2 in cement, CO2 in other applications. I think as we advance, and that's the technologies we're talking about, we will get to an aspect of being able to have more value from CO2.
So Amin, I think we got to go back to you now to give you, after you've heard these points of view.
No, as I said, we need to scale in order to reduce the cost. If you look at the cost of CO2 per ton in the kingdom, it's one of the lowest costs in terms of that. It's at $85. If you look at doing blue hydrogen, you need to sequester the CO2. Otherwise, you cannot produce blue hydrogen. And for us, when we looked at sequestering CO2 under the ground, producing blue hydrogen, putting it in certain market, we are the lowest cost compared to any market in the globe. So there are certain countries that they would like these solutions. They do have a lot of incentive. We cannot stop them from giving the incentive. They have the markets, and as long as they are willing to pay for it, we will be more than happy to provide it. So we have a great geology for sequestering CO2 in the kingdom. It's the lowest cost, and we do have enough underground to sequester all the kingdom requirement and more when it comes to CO2. So there are customers, as I said, as we build up in our blue hydrogens in the future, and there will be a time that blue hydrogen and green hydrogen will scale up. The cost will also go down. You need to scale. If you don't scale, this is what's the problem with today? Why is the $85? Because we don't have many projects in CO2 sequestration. We need to have scaling. We need to have many projects around the world. Then economy of scale will work out. Your cost will go down, and then you can avail more products. And if there is uses for the CO2 at a more competitive advantage than sequestering, will be great. But ultimately, we do have a strategy. We need to, for example, for Saudi Aramco, our strategy is to have 0 when it comes to scope 1 and scope 2. And we are using efficiency improvement. We are using CO2 sequestration. We are looking at different elements, renewables, to offset our scope 2 because it helps us a lot. That's why we are also on renewable. All of these work together until you achieve your ultimate goal. So we are also working on cement, as Olivier mentioned. It's a big thing for us to look at how much of that CO2 we can use in cement and use it in application. All of these, you need to work in many directions until you reach the stage where it is optimum in terms of cost.
So Mohammed, are you convinced now?
Wallahi, I cannot, as you know, argue with Amin.
Well, you can, but only up to
Amin
a point.
will have the wisdom, have a better argument than myself. But what I'm saying, that we are happy with the President Trump administration, because this is the administration, at least they come to reality. And reality, that fossil fuel, we need it forever. But we need renewable, we need green energy, we need combination, we need to look at it economics, sustainability, security. And reality today, we not want people to lecture us as it has happened in the past, what wrong, what right. We need to be, each country has to decide by its own, and no country will come and force you to do something because they have certain ideas or certain mindset that they want to impose it.
Well, let me take one idea that was very prevalent 3 or 4 years ago. You've already mentioned it, and this has to do with timing, that the hopes for hydrogen of a few years ago have not reached the scale that had been expected. Is the problem supply or is the problem demand?
For me, it's very clear. I'm telling you, I believe in creating demand. It's not going to be easy for hydrogen. What you do, as Amin said, and some of my colleagues, you need to produce at large scale and create demand by supply at competitiveness. Look at it in green hydrogen. It is 50% lower than any country could produce in the whole world.
Right.
Why? Because we have the competitive edge of Saudi Arabia, scale, renewable resources, finance cost, all of the above. And also, we are producing. Now we have an offtake of 30 years.
Right.
Why? Because we have been able to reduce the cost of green hydrogen 50%.
But let me ask Amin, you've spoken in the past about the problem of demand. Is that the market?
We spoke about it in the past that we don't think this demand will materialize, because the numbers that was shown by consulting agencies and others that shows a huge demand for green and blue.
Those people from the north.
And some in the south, 1 or 2. But the bottom line, ultimately, and they thought the cost will go down drastically from $4 per kilogram to $1 per kilogram. None of that materialized. Supply is available. You want, as Mohammed said, you want green hydrogen, it's available. You want blue hydrogen, it's available. But we are not going to start constructing these projects until we get the offtake. And the price is known because we did the engineering and we did the bidding and we know how much it will cost us to build these projects. But we need the offtake. So we have been into different markets asking for offtake. Offtake is not materializing as of yet because the cost is high. At the end of the day, it's a $200, as I said. I always say it's 200 and 400.
Right.
And I need an offtake not for 1 year. I need an offtake for 20 years. So when they looked at their numbers, they reduced the amount of requirements significantly.
Right. Well, let me thank you all for not only discussing the practical solutions for energy transition, but very much the practical thinking for energy transition. Please join me in thanking our panel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you.
See you around.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, everybody. What we're going to do now is we are going to take
Ladies and gentlemen, sorry again for this interruption. The leaders are on their way, but it is taking a little bit of time. So we still have almost 15 minutes. So we don't want you to continue to wait too long. So we'll have for the next 15 minutes a conversation between His Excellency, the Minister of Information and Communication and Telecommunication, His Excellency Al-Suwaha, and his special guest, Mr. Elon Musk. Please, a round of applause.
Please, Elon, my friend, please. Please, have a seat. Now, I'm sure we can do a better welcome than that to Elon Musk in Saudi Arabia. There you go. That's the spirit.
Thank you.
Elon, my dear friend, we're honored to have President Trump. We're honored under the sponsorship and guidance of His Royal Highness to celebrate a U.S.-Saudi and a Saudi-U.S. relationship that is 92 years old, about how we move from an oil-based economy to an innovation-based economy powered by wonderful technologies that definitely you're one of the pioneers in this industry. We just showed to His Royal Highness some of your Optimus robots, and to President Trump. Let's talk about that. Tell me about them.
Yes, so we just showed several of our Tesla Optimus robots to His Highness and President Trump, and I think they were very impressed. In fact, one of our robots did the Trump dance, which I think was pretty cool.
The YMCA, yeah?
Yeah, to YMCA. So yeah, our robots can dance, they can walk around, they can interact. I think we're headed to a radically different world. I think a good world, an interesting world. My prediction actually for humanoid robots is that ultimately there will be tens of billions. I think everyone will want to have their personal robot. You can think of it like as though you had your own personal C-3PO or R2-D2, but even better. Then who wouldn't want to have their own personal C-3PO, R2-D2? That would be pretty great. What is the output of an economy? It is productivity per capita times population, or capita. Once you have humanoid robots, the actual economic output potential is tremendous. It's really unlimited. Potentially, we could have an economy 10 times the size of the current global economy, where no one wants for anything. Sometimes in AI they talk about universal basic income. I think it's actually going to be universal high income, where anyone can have any goods or services that they want. A science fiction book recommendation that I have, which I think is probably the best envisioning of an AI future, is the culture books by Ian Banks. Very highly recommended for a non-dystopian view of the future. Now, there obviously are some risks, which illustrate perhaps if we don't do this right, you could have like a James Cameron sort of movie, Terminator. We don't want that one. But having sort of a Star Trek future would be great, where we're out there exploring the stars, discovering the nature of the universe, and a level of prosperity and hopefully happiness that we can't quite imagine yet. So I'm very excited about the future, and very glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's our absolute pleasure.
Yeah.
And His Royal Highness was talking to you about his vision and his dream to increase productivity for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and power up the region and the whole world with robotics, but also on robo-taxis. So how are we doing on robo-taxis?
Yeah, so really you can think of a car or future cars as being robots on 4 wheels. And, you know, I think it would be very exciting to have autonomous vehicles here in the kingdom.
Indeed.
If you're amenable.
You heard it here from Elon. He's bringing his robo-taxi to the kingdom.
Yeah.
He has another announcement that he's going to share later.
Exactly. So, and I'd also like to thank the kingdom for approving Starlink for maritime and aviation use. Thank you.
Maritime and aviation. There you go. There you go.
Yeah. So
you're going to bring us robots to help us increase our productivity.
Yeah.
Robo-taxis to make sure that our cars and assets turn into a cash-generating unit.
Yeah.
And Starlink to reform our aviation and maritime.
Yeah.
Talk about XAI.
Absolutely. But I should want to mention also something that may be worth considering is tunnels.
Tunnels. The Boring Company.
I have this company called The Boring Company, which sounds kind of boring, but it literally bores tunnels. And actually, tunnels, in order to solve traffic, you really need to go 3D with roads. And by using tunnels, you can essentially create like a wormhole, like a warp tunnel from one part of a city to another and alleviate traffic. And we've actually already done this proof of concept in Vegas. So there are working tunnels in Las Vegas that you can use where that'll just, it feels like teleporting from one part of Vegas to another. So I always say that, you know, my joke is like tunnels are underappreciated, you know. You know, it's a bit of a, not always a hit, but. Yeah, and then XAI is just trying to solve general purpose artificial intelligence. The goal with XAI is to have a maximally truth-seeking AI. And it's important to be maximally truth-seeking AI in order to understand the universe. Mm-hmm. So the goal of XAI is understand the universe. To understand, what is out there. Where's the universe going? Where did it come from? What questions? In fact, I think maybe the biggest thing is, what questions do we not know to ask? Like, once you know the question, the answer is usually the easy part. So the goal of XAI is to help understand the universe and yeah, that's the goal. And help people answer any questions along the way, of course. But I mean, that's my philosophy. My philosophy is one of curiosity, just trying to understand the nature of reality.
So I know you had a long day, but we also have the Honorable President and His Royal Highness Saidi hitting the stage soon. Yes. So this is a historic day, a partnership about how we could join hands together, as we have joined hands in the past 92 years, on building a factor-based economy to help the world and power up 20% of the energy mix, which is very critical today to the AI intelligence age, the digital age, and how we have reformed, and with the intelligent age. And we could not be more appreciative of having a lifetime partner and a friend like you, Elon, to the kingdom.
Thank you.
Joining hands on XAI, Starlink, and robotics and Tesla. Thank you so much on behalf of the whole kingdom. And we look forward to continue the partnership. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Please.
All right.
Your Royal Highnesses, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, the arrival of His Royal Highness, Prince Mohammed bin Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, the Crown Prince and Prime Minister, and Mr. Yes. Alongside Mr. Donald J. Trump, the 45th and 47th President of the United States of America. They're actually beginning their tour in the Gallery of Memories. That's a curated exhibition that tells the story of nearly 8 decades of Saudi-American partnership. They're moving forward to the Gallery of Memories. The journey begins with a historic moment. As you can see, here at the center of the exhibition stands a historic disc, a significant piece gifted in 1950 to King Abdulaziz bin Abdurrahman Al Saud by US President Harry Truman. And the journey begins with a historic moment, the 1945 meeting between King Abdulaziz bin Abdurrahman Al Saud and the President Franklin Roosevelt, a defining encounter that laid the foundation for a lasting diplomatic relationships between the two nations, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the United States of America. And there, the two leaders will walk through the Journey of Transformation Gallery, Saudi Vision 2030 Gallery, a forward-looking space that brings to life the kingdom's national transformation. Here in this area, it features scale models of some of the kingdom's most iconic future projects, including Prince Mohammed bin Salman Stadium, which will host the world as Saudi Arabia welcomes the FIFA World Cup in 2034. That's the iconic future project, Prince Mohammed bin Salman Stadium. And now, the journey brings the distinguished leaders to the Prosperity Hall, a celebration of enterprise and partnership. Here we have Saudi and American companies stand side by side, showcasing opportunity and innovation. This is prosperity redefined, ladies and gentlemen. We have His Excellency Yasser Mayan, the Governor of BIF, His Excellency Khalid Al-Faleh, Minister of Investment, and Engineer Amin Al-Nasser, CEO of Aramco. They're standing now in front of Aramco's booth, taking the tour in the Prosperity Hall. As we mentioned, it's a celebration of enterprise and partnership, showcasing untapped opportunities and innovation. Here we have Jerry Anzarello. This is the master plan for Ad-Diriyah, city of the land, birthplace of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Here, we always say, and Jerry always reiterates, there is only one Diriyah. The leaders are continuing the tour in the Prosperity Hall, where prosperity is really defined, making their way to the plenary hall. And for that, we have here, I think that's the master plan for New Murabba project. A project that's redefining urban design, planning, and development. This area, the Prosperity Hall, really reflects the grounding in collective growth, meaningful collaboration, and mutual ambitions. Now they're taking a look at the Red Sea Global. Here's the CEO, John Pagano, having a conversation with His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed bin Salman bin Abdulaziz, the Crown Prince and Prime Minister, and the 45th and 47th President of the United States of America, Mr. Donald J. Trump. The Red Sea Global, redefining regenerative tourism locally, regionally, and globally. As you can see, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the distinguished leaders are making their way to the plenary hall here as I ask you, all distinguished guests, to please rise for the entrance of His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed bin Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, Crown Prince and Prime Minister, and the 45th and 47th President of the United States of America, Mr. Donald J. Trump. Thank you. Thank you all for your time and patience. Here in this spot, the Journey of Transformation Saudi Vision 2030 Gallery. It's a forward-looking space that brings to life the kingdom's national transformation. Here we see a full scoop of Saudi Vision 2030, innovation at scale, economic diversification, flourishing tourism, and expansive opportunities to explore. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed bin Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, Crown Prince and Prime Minister, and the 45th and 47th President of the United States of America, Mr. Donald Trump. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Your Royal Highness, Prince Mohammed bin Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, Crown Prince and Prime Minister, and the 45th and 47th President of the United States of America, Mr. Donald Trump. Ladies and gentlemen, it's truly an honor to welcome you all to the Saudi-US Investment Forum here in the vibrant capital of Riyadh. I'm Mu'amad Dakhil, a Saudi journalist and TV presenter, and it's my great pleasure to be here with you today as we experience a living expression of one of the most influential bilateral relationships in the modern world, the strategic partnership between the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the United States of America. And today, here in this room, it manifests in a very tangible, dynamic form with 140 distinguished global speakers, 2,500 delegates in attendance with us today, 15 pivotal panel discussions, and focused dialogues across very critical sectors. And at the center of this momentum are the strategic economic partnership agreements. Signed today, we're talking about 145 investment agreements totaling more than $300 billion US. What a momentum, what a moment. Yes. Oh, yes. This is really energetic. And we have with us the business leaders representing the strategic economic partnership agreements. To commemorate this moment, I'm deeply honored to welcome His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed bin Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, the Crown Prince and Prime Minister, and the 45th and 47th President of the United States of America, Mr. Donald J. Trump. Welcome. Please join the business leaders representing the strategic economic partnership agreements for a memorable photograph. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause and a deep appreciation for this moment and for our distinguished leaders. We witness this moment that reflects the trust and determination shared by two nations to move forward together. As you can see, the leaders at the center of this frame shaping the next phase of prosperity for both nations, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the United States of America. And now, distinguished guests, I'm deeply and truly honored to welcome His Royal Highness, Prince Mohammed bin Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, Crown Prince and Prime Minister, to deliver his speech. Welcome, Your Royal Highness. The stage is yours. What a moment. What a moment. What a moment.
My dear friend President Trump, dear guests, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia at the Saudi-US Investment Forum. Our two friendly countries have deep economic relations that began 92 years ago, specifically in 1933 by signing an oil exploration concession agreement in the kingdom with Standard Oil of California. We meet today to deepen this strategic partnership in its various stages, from an economy based on natural resources to an economy built on diversifying sources of income, knowledge, and innovation. Joint investments were one of the most important pillars of our economic relationship. The Saudi economy is currently the largest economy in the region, the largest economic partner of the United States in the region, and one of the fastest growing economies in the G20. The strength of economic relations between the two countries was reflected on the growth of trade exchange reaching $500 billion during 2013 to 24. Today, we are working on partnership opportunities with $600 billion, including agreements worth more than $300 billion that were announced in this forum. In the coming months, we will work on second phase to finalize the remaining agreements to raise them to $1 trillion. This growing partnership represents the extension of multiple cooperation in the military, security, economic, and technological fields in order to enhance mutual benefits, supporting job opportunities in the kingdom, contribute to localization of industries, grow local content, and develop our GDP. The United States of America is a major destination for the PIF accounting more than 40% of global investments, which reflects the confidence of the U.S. economy capabilities to innovate, especially in promising sectors such as technology and AI, which contributes to transfer of knowledge and exchange of expertise. Number of U.S. companies operating in the kingdom is 1,300 companies, representing approximately a quarter of the volume of foreign investments. These include 200 companies that have their regional headquarters in the kingdom. The kingdom's Vision 2030 was able to achieve most of its targets. It is bringing about an unprecedented economic transformation that aims to diversify the economy and empower the private sector to be the main driver of growth in the largest economy in the region. Non-oil exports have increased $82 billion in 24. Additionally, over 2.4 million male and female citizens were employed. The unemployment rate fell to its lowest historical levels with the multiplication of women's contribution to the labor market. In conclusion, Mr. President, I am confident that today we will continue to build with you based on the foundations of these close partnership between our two countries. What we signed today is part of a greater ambition that invests the opportunities for cooperation and exchange of benefits. Mr. President, our joint action is not limited to economic cooperation, but extends towards bringing about security, stability, peace in the region and the world. Once again, I welcome you in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. I look forward to listening to your remark, Mr. President.
You need to go.
And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. Of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit down to Houston and New York to LA, where there's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say that I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. The men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the
Well, thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. What a great place. What a great place, but more importantly, what great people. I want to thank His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince, for that incredible introduction. He's an incredible man. Known him a long time now. There's nobody like him. Thank you very much. Appreciate it very much, my friend. And it's a tremendous honor to return to this beautiful kingdom and be welcomed back with such extraordinary generosity and warmth. I've never forgotten the exceptional hospitality showed to us by King Solomon, who's just, we talk about a great man. That is a great man. That is a great man, a great family. And that visit took place exactly 8 years ago. The graciousness of the royal family and the Saudi people is really unsurpassed, no matter where you go. Let me also thank the countless ministers, government officials, business leaders, and distinguished guests for that warm welcome. Very warm, and I know so many of you. I'd like to call out all of your names, but we have a lot of problems. We'd be here for a long time. We don't want that, so don't be upset. With this historic state visit, we celebrate more than 80 years of close partnership between the United States and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Ever since President Franklin Roosevelt met with King Solomon's father, King Abdul Aziz, aboard the USS Quincy in 1945, the U.S.-Saudi relationship has been a bedrock of security and prosperity. Today, we reaffirm this important bond, and we take the next steps to make our relationship closer, stronger, and more powerful than ever before. It is more powerful than ever before. And by the way, it will remain that way. We don't go in and out like other people. It will remain that way. I've come this afternoon to talk about the bright future of the Middle East, but first let me begin by sharing the abundance of good news from a place called America. In less than 4 months, our new administration has achieved more than most other administrations accomplish in 4 years or even 8 years. We've actually done, for the most part, more. The day I took office, we inherited, thank you. Thank you. The day I took office, we inherited a colossal invasion on our southern border, an invasion like you'd never want to see here. Nobody should ever want to see it. But within weeks, we slashed illegal border crossings to an all-time low, down 99.999%. That's good, even for this great gentleman standing right in front of me. That's a good number. We had hundreds of thousands of people. They came in at the same time last year, and last month we had, in this massive border, 3 people that got in. That's quite a difference, and we have no choice but to get a lot of the people that came in because they were not the best people. They were, in many cases, very bad people. We're getting them out. We're getting them out very fast. We're bringing them back to where they came from. We have no choice. After years of military recruiting shortfalls, enlistments in the U.S. Armed Forces are now the highest in 30 years because there is such an incredible spirit in the United States of America. We have tremendous spirit again. Just about a year ago, it was a big story, front page on every paper all over the world, that nobody wanted to enlist in our military, meaning we were way under enlisted. And just last week it came out that we had the strongest enlistment. They say 30 years, but probably it's maybe ever. They don't go back that far. It's the best, and that includes police officers, firemen, everything else. Is a great spirit in the United States right now. A brand new poll from Rasmussen just showed that the number of Americans who believe the nation is on the right track, they have a right track, wrong track, is now the highest in over 20 years. And it hasn't been anything like this because for many years it was the wrong track. And I can tell you for the last 4 years it was definitely the wrong track, but it's the highest it's been in many, many years. We renamed the Gulf of Mexico into the Gulf of America. That was very popular, other than perhaps with Mexico. And most importantly, for the people in this room, the days of economic misery under the last administration are rapidly giving way to the greatest economy in the history of the world. We are rocking. The United States is the hottest country, with the exception of your country, I have to say, right? I'm not going to take that on. No, Mohammed, I'm not going to take that on. Wouldn't that be a terrible thing if I made that full statement? But I will not do it. You're hotter. At least as long as I'm up here, you're hotter. But groceries, gasoline, energy, and all other prices are down with no inflation. We have no inflation, and in a few short weeks, we've created 464,000 brand new jobs. Think of that. It's almost 500,000 jobs created just in a matter of weeks. We just reached a historic trade agreement with the United Kingdom, and over the weekend we reached a breakthrough agreement with China. Both outstanding deals. China's agreed. We have to get it down. We have to get the little details down. And Scott, you're going to work on that very hard, but China's agreed to open up to the United States for trade and everything else. But they have to do it, so we'll see what happens. But we had a very, very good meeting with both of those countries. We are cutting 10 old regulations for every new regulation. We're getting rid of all of the red tape that is so many, frankly, countries, as they get older, they develop a lot of red tape, and we're getting rid of it. We're getting rid of it at record levels. And I'm pleased to report that the United States Congress is on the verge of passing the largest tax cut and regulation cut in American history. We think we're in good shape to get that. And if we get that, that will be like a rocket ship for our country. In the first quarter of the year, the investment in America was up an astounding 22%. More than $10 trillion of new investments have been announced or are coming just since the election on November 5th. So think of that. In a very short period of time, we have over $10 trillion, and it could be much higher than that. Not everybody comes to the White House to have a news conference that they're going to be opening up in America, but they're all coming in at numbers that we've never seen before. If you take a look at other presidencies, they wouldn't do $1 trillion sometime in years. We did this in essentially 2 months because you have to say we got into office and they gave me about a month to clean up and fix up the Oval Office, and after that we started working. And the money is pouring in, the jobs are pouring in, the companies are pouring into our country like we've never seen before. There's never been anything like it. And we let other people tariff us into losing a lot of money and a lot of jobs, and now we're tariffing them. And it's at a level that nobody's seen. It's a level that is making us a very much different country and a very different Republican Party. We won a tremendous victory in November. We won all 7 swing states, the popular vote by millions and millions of votes. The Electoral College, we won by 312 to 226. Remember, they said, well, we could get to 270. No, we got to 312. That's a big difference. And very importantly, we won counties throughout the United States, 2,660 to 451. That's why when you look at a map, they're all red. The whole country is red. Red stands for Republican. From the moment on and from the moment we started, we've seen wealth that just poured and is pouring back into America. Apple is investing $500 billion. NVIDIA is investing, and I see my friend is here. Jensen, that's very good, wherever you may be. I thank you very much, because he's putting in $500 billion. TSMC is investing. Where is Jensen, by the way? Where is he? He's standing here. Where is he? I just saw that. Thank you very much, Jensen. I mean, Tim Cook isn't here, but you are. What a job you've done. He said he's got 99% of the chip market. I don't know. That's not easy to beat, but what a job you've done. Thank you. We are proud to have you in our country. You know that. Thank you for the investment. TSMC is investing $200 billion, and with this trip, We're adding over $1 trillion more in terms of investment into our country and buying our products. And, you know, nobody makes military equipment like us. We have the best military equipment, the best missiles, the best rockets, the best everything. Best submarines, by the way, most lethal weapon in the world. In addition to purchases of $142 billion of American-made military equipment by our great Saudi partners, the largest ever. This week there are multi-billion-dollar commercial deals with Amazon, Oracle, AMD, they're all here, Uber, Qualcomm, Johnson & Johnson, and many, many more. So I want to congratulate everybody, so many great business executives, many of you, most of you I know, and they're coming in, you know, about a month ago. They weren't that happy when they saw me, and now they're saying, sir, you're doing a great job. Thank you very much. It's amazing what a rising market will do. Oh, it's going to get a lot higher. In fact, I told people 5 weeks ago, this is a great time to buy. I got criticized for that. Now they don't criticize me anymore. People should have listened. But it's going to go a lot higher. You see, we've never had anything like this happen. It's an explosion of investment and jobs, and great companies are coming in. Never seen anything like it. There's no better place to make a future or make a fortune, do anything, frankly, than what we have in the United States of America under a certain President, Donald J. Trump. I have the right attitude. I have the same attitude that the people in the front row, second row, third row have. As you get back, perhaps they start to wane a little bit in terms of their view. But they understand, and we're doing what a lot of smart people would do. And we're not necessarily being politically correct. You saw what we did yesterday with health care. We've cut our health care by 50 to 90%. You're going to see drugs and pharmaceuticals come down at numbers that nobody has ever seen. And drugs, pharmaceuticals, we think will be dropping. And it'll be a redistribution of costs with other nations, which really took advantage of a very nice group of people that ran our country. But not only is this a time of incredible excitement in the United States, it's also an exhilarating period right here in the Arabian Peninsula. Beautiful place, by the way, beautiful place. Exactly, thank you. Exactly 8 years ago this month, I stood in this very room and looked forward to a future in which the nations of this region would drive the forces of terrorism and extremism, drive them right out of existence, and take your place among the proudest, most prosperous, most successful nations anywhere in the world as leaders of a modern and rising Middle East. So exciting, so exciting. Mohammed, do you sleep at night? How do you sleep? Huh? Just thinking. What a job. He tosses and turns like some of us. Tosses and turns all night. How do I make it even better all night? It's the ones that don't toss and turn. They're the ones that will never take you to the promised land, won't they? But you have done some job. True. But critics doubted that it was possible what you've done. But over the past 8 years, Saudi Arabia has proved the critics totally wrong. The transformation that has occurred even by these incredible business leaders. I mean, you had the biggest leaders in business anywhere in the world standing right before us. But the transformation that has occurred under the leadership of King Salman and Crown Prince Mohammed has been truly extraordinary. Such a thing has, I don't think, ever happened before. I've never seen anything at that scale happen before. And I guess, you know, maybe you could say the United States is doing pretty well, too, you know, but I don't think too many people have seen that happen before. Majestic skyscrapers, the towers that I see, the difference between now and 8 years ago. And 8 years ago was very impressive, but the towers that I see rising, some of the exhibits that I was shown by Mohammed, what I've seen there is just an amazing, it's an amazing process, amazing genius of so many people, architecture, but I have a feeling I know where many of those ideas came from. Happens to be sitting right in this room right before me, but the towers and all of the different, I've seen a lot of different towers. I didn't think there's any version of a tower that I haven't seen in one form or another. Well, I just passed 4 exhibits. I have never seen anything like any of them. So it's going to be very exciting. And they sit among the ancient wonders of a growing and exciting city. It's really amazing. Riyadh is becoming not just a seat of government, but a major business, cultural, and high-tech capital of the entire world. The World Cup is here. Johnny, just stand up, Johnny. Johnny, thank you, Johnny. Great job, Johnny, great job. But the World Cup and the World Expo will soon be coming here, just like the World Cup is coming to the United States. It's going to be really exciting next year. The engines of Formula One racing now roar through the streets of Jeddah in a historic milestone. Other industries recently surpassed oil. Think of it, all of your other industries now have surpassed oil. I don't know if a lot of people will understand what that means. It's so big to make up a majority of the Saudi economy for the very first time ever. So think of that. Other industries are now bigger even than oil, which is always going to be a big monster. It's a big one. But that's a great tribute to you and economic development properly used. In other cities throughout the peninsula, places like Dubai and Abu Dhabi, Doha, Muscat, the transformations have been unbelievably remarkable. Before our eyes, a new generation of leaders is transcending the ancient conflicts of tired divisions of the past and forging a future where the Middle East is defined by commerce, not chaos, where it exports technology, not terrorism, and where people of different nations, religions, and creeds are building cities together, not bombing each other out of existence. We don't want that. And it's crucial for the wider world to note this great transformation has not come from Western interventionists or flying people in beautiful planes giving you lectures on how to live and how to govern your own affairs. No, the gleaming marvels of Riyadh and Abu Dhabi were not created by the so-called nation builders, neocons, or liberal nonprofits like those who spent trillions and trillions of dollars failing to develop Kabul, Baghdad, so many other cities. Instead, the birth of a modern Middle East has been brought by the people of the region themselves, the people that are right here, the people that have lived here all their lives, developing your own sovereign countries, pursuing your own unique visions and charting your own destinies in your own way. It's really incredible what you've done. In the end, the so-called nation builders wrecked far more nations than they built, and the interventionists were intervening in complex societies that they did not even understand themselves. They told you how to do it, but they had no idea how to do it themselves. Peace, prosperity, and progress ultimately came not from a radical rejection of your heritage, but rather from embracing your national traditions and embracing that same heritage that you love so dearly. And it's something only you could do. You achieved a modern miracle, the Arabian way. That's a good way. Today, the Gulf nations have shown this entire region a path towards safe and orderly societies with improving quality of life, flourishing economic growth, expanding personal freedoms, and increasing responsibilities on the world stage. After so many decades of conflict, finally it is within our grasp to reach the future that generations before us could only dream about a land of peace, safety, harmony, opportunity, innovation, and achievement right here in the Middle East. So beautiful. It's such a beautiful thing that's happening. I guess, the people that are here can't even really appreciate it because you see it happening, and it's when you come to a place that you haven't seen in 5 years or 10 years or 20 years that it's even more incredible. When I left office just over 4 years ago, that future seemed almost impossible, what you've done. Together we had obliterated the killers of ISIS. We wiped them out, terminated its founder and leader, al-Baghdadi. We had healed the divide in the Gulf Cooperation Council, it's a very big deal, and united the nations of the region to stand against the enemies of all civilization. We'd imposed unprecedented sanctions on Iran and starved the regime of resources to fund terror. They were unable to fund anything because they had no money left. They had no money. But the new administration came in and let them have a lot of money, and you saw what happened. It was not money well spent. And with the historic Abraham Accords that we're so proud of, all the momentum was aimed at peace, and it aimed very successfully. It's been an amazing thing, the Abraham Accords, and it's my fervent hope, wish, and even my dream that Saudi Arabia, a place I have such respect for, especially over the last fairly short period of time, what you've been able to do, but we'll soon be joining the Abraham Accords. I think it'll be a tremendous tribute to your country, and it will be something that's really going to be very important for the future of the Middle East. I took a risk in doing them, and they've been an absolute bonanza for the countries that have joined. The Biden administration did nothing for 4 years. We would have had it filled out. But it will be a special day in the Middle East with the whole world watching when Saudi Arabia joins us, and you'll be greatly honoring me, and you'll be greatly honoring all of those people that have fought so hard for the Middle East, and I really think it's going to be something special, but you'll do it in your own time, and that's what I want, and that's what you want, and that's the way it's going to be. When I left office, the only thing still standing between this region and its unbelievable potential was a small group of rogue actors and violent thugs seeking constantly to drag the Middle East backward and into havoc, mayhem, and indeed into war. Unfortunately, instead of confronting these destructive forces, the last U.S. administration chose to enrich them and empower them and give them billions and billions of dollars. The Biden administration, the worst administration in the history of our country, by the way, spurned our most trusted and longstanding Gulf partners, and I can say partners worldwide, one of our great, great partners, no matter who we look to, and we have great partners in the world, but we have none stronger and nobody like the gentleman that's right before me. He's your greatest representative, greatest representative. And if I didn't like him, I'd get out of here so fast. You know that, don't you? He knows me well. I do. I like him a lot. I like him too much. That's why we give so much, Too much.